I mean, the original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
And to everyone who hates when I win, the winged victory came to the Louvre in pieces, and people still line up to see her.
Oh my God.
And I can only hope
What does that mean?
that despite my flaws,
Oh.
and despite my cracks and my breaks, and there are many of them, that at every premiere and everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
Disney's Snow White. Just the name conjures up images of magic, fairy tales, and happily ever after. But the latest live-action remake? It became a box office blizzard of epic proportions, a Hollywood cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones across studios. And at the heart of this storm was one person, Rachel Zegler. From rising star to public pariah, her journey became a train wreck you couldn't look away from. How did a Disney dream turn into a full-blown PR nightmare? Let's dive into the shocking story of the Snow White meltdown.
So no prince, or a different kind of prince?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, we cast a guy in the movie.
Right.
Andrew Burnap, great dude.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby. But it's one of those things.
So true.
It's an inner journey that she goes on to find her true self, and she meets a lot of people along the way that make the journey really incredible.
Rachel Zegler. Cast as Snow White, she initially represented a breath of fresh air, a promising talent stepping into the glass slippers of a legendary princess. There was palpable excitement surrounding her casting, a sense that Disney was ushering in a new era, embracing diversity while honoring a classic. However, this initial wave of optimism soon crashed against the rocks of public opinion. As Zegler began promotional interviews, her commentary on the source material took a decidedly unexpected turn. She didn't just offer a modern perspective, she appeared to actively critique the very foundations of the 1937 animated masterpiece. Statements dismissing the original film's romantic core, characterizing Prince Charming's actions as stalker-like, and labeling its themes as antiquated began to circulate. "A guy who literally stalks her," she remarked. Weird. These weren't subtle nuances, they were direct challenges to the cherished elements that generations had associated with Snow White. For many viewers, this felt less like a respectful reimagining and more like a dismissal, even a disparagement of a cultural icon. The reaction was swift and sharp. Online forums and social media platforms buzzed with confusion, then frustration, and finally outright anger. Fans of the original felt not just unheard, but actively alienated. Calls for boycott started to surface, memes began to circulate, and the seeds of a major PR crisis were firmly sown. But the digital discontent was merely a prelude. The real shocker was the film's performance once it actually reached cinema screens, proving that words indeed can have costly consequences.
I just wanted to go on this little baby rant about Rachel Zegler. She's the young woman that was cast as Snow White. It has proven to be Disney's worst investment ever in the history of Disney investments. I mean, they've gone through various scandals with this girl.
I just have to note the smugness and superiority on this 23, 25, something like that, girl's face. Yeah, and a little bit of humility, This is a story that's been around for a long time. You're not improving on it. So they took out the famous theme song, "Someday My Prince Will Come," because it's not fair for a woman to live for love or want to find love or want to find a prince. They were not going to do that anymore, and they replaced it with the far more catchy song, this typical girl power anthem.
When Snow White finally debuted, it didn't just stumble at the box office, it plummeted, becoming a financial black hole for Disney. The opening weekend figures were shockingly low, barely registering on the radar of blockbuster expectations. Insiders whispered about a production budget soaring past $250 million, a staggering investment that demanded a substantial return just to break even. Disney, a studio built on nostalgia and beloved intellectual property, had placed a monumental bet on this remake, anticipating a wave of audiences eager to revisit a cherished fairy tale with a contemporary twist. Marketing efforts were ramped up, trailers promised a fresh take, and the hype machine roared to life. Yet the audience response was deafeningly silent. Instead of packed theaters, cinema halls echoed with empty seats. The projected revenue streams dried up, and the financial losses began to accumulate at an alarming rate. Industry analysts, initially optimistic, were forced to revise their predictions, scrambling to understand the depth of the failure. Comparisons to other Disney live-action remakes, many of which had enjoyed massive success, only amplified the magnitude of the Snow White debacle. It wasn't simply underperforming, it was setting new lows, breaking records for the most dismal opening of any live-action Disney remake to date. The financial fallout was undeniable, a stark and brutal reality that sent shockwaves through the studio and the wider Hollywood landscape. And amidst this fiscal wreckage, Rachel Zegler's reaction, or rather lack thereof, became another focal point of the unfolding drama.
Decided to film herself in a theater totally empty, giggling, tee-hee-heeing with total glee. Look at this. Look at this face. What can be said about this level of narcissism? Here, please, enjoy.
In the face of mounting criticism and catastrophic box office returns, a traditional PR strategy would dictate damage control, a measured and conciliatory approach to mitigate the fallout. However, Rachel Zegler's response veered sharply in the opposite direction, inadvertently pouring gasoline on an already raging fire. Videos emerged on social media, purportedly featuring Zegler in near-empty movie theaters, her laughter and seemingly gleeful demeanor sparking widespread outrage. This action, perceived by many as deeply insensitive and lacking in self-awareness, ignited a social media firestorm. Her online presence became characterized by a series of defiant pronouncements, seemingly dismissive of the negative reviews and unwavering in her defense of the controversial creative choices. The internet, already simmering with discontent, erupted in a torrent of criticism. Accusations of narcissism, tone deafness, and entitlement flooded social media platforms. Memes mocking her statements and actions proliferated at an astonishing rate, painting her as out of touch with audience sentiment and oblivious to the gravity of the situation. The public narrative solidified this wasn't just about a poorly received movie, it was about a star who appeared to be actively alienating the very audience she needed to win over. She was crowned the face of the film, and now, in the eyes of many, she was also becoming the face of its spectacular failure, a self-inflicted wound amplified by the unforgiving nature of the digital age. And as the public drama unfolded online, whispers of turmoil and tension behind the scenes began to surface, adding another layer of intrigue to the unfolding saga.
And how they had her tweet out like a little, "Yay, Snow White, can't wait, so excited, I love to play her." And she did it and got like millions of views, and they were like, "Good job, Rachel." And then she, like minutes later, followed it up with, "And never forget, free Palestine."
And isn't her co-star Jewish?
Yes.
Gal Gadot, whatever.
Gadot. I mean, what?
Yeah.
Wow.
She's Jewish, and apparently this actually all hell broke loose. Gal started getting threats.
Beyond the public pronouncements and box office catastrophes, a darker narrative began to emerge from behind the closed doors of Hollywood. Whispers of on-set discord, particularly friction between Zegler and her acclaimed co-star Gal Gadot, started to leak into industry circles. Rumors suggested a clash of personalities, differing approaches to the project's message, and a growing sense of unease permeating the production. Some accounts hinted at Zegler's assertive, even confrontational style, clashing with more established industry veterans and studio executives. The carefully curated image of a harmonious Disney set began to crumble, replaced by tales of tension, strained interactions, and a production struggling to maintain cohesion amidst mounting external pressure. Disney, a corporation fiercely protective of its carefully crafted brand image, reportedly entered crisis management mode. Stories circulated of emergency PR meetings convened to strategize damage control, hush-hush memos circulated internally, and attempts made to contain the escalating public relations nightmare. Some reports even suggested increased security measures for Gal Gadot, possibly in response to online threats or heightened anxieties related to the controversy. The atmosphere on set, once envisioned as a magical kingdom of creativity, had reportedly transformed into a pressure cooker, a breeding ground for anxiety and uncertainty. The fairy tale facade had cracked, revealing a less enchanting reality beneath the surface. And while the industry insiders whispered about backstage drama, the media and the insatiable appetite of the internet were poised to amplify every misstep, every perceived misjudgment, turning the Snow White saga into a full-blown media spectacle.
Controversy around the film began ever since we learned that there would be no Prince Charming because apparently he kissed her without consent, and also no woman needs a man to rescue her. The movie also used CGI for the Seven Dwarfs rather than actors because they thought using real people would be offensive.
The scent of scandal, coupled with the spectacular nature of the Snow White failure, proved irresistible to the media and the online world. A feeding frenzy ensued, with every aspect of the controversy, particularly Rachel Zegler's role in it, subjected to intense scrutiny and often merciless mockery. Mainstream media outlets ran scathing reviews, dissecting the film's flaws and highlighting Zegler's controversial statements as contributing factors to its downfall. Opinion pieces proliferated, analyzing the broader cultural implications of the Snow White debacle and questioning Hollywood's approach to adapting classic tales for modern audiences. But it was the internet, with its boundless creativity and penchant for instant commentary, that truly transformed the situation into a cultural phenomenon. Meme culture exploded, weaponizing humor and satire to dissect and critique every facet of the Snow White saga. Parody videos reimagining Zegler's interviews with exaggerated comedic effect went viral. Image macros juxtaposing her statements with scenes from the original animated film circulated endlessly. The label Snow Woke became ubiquitous, encapsulating the online perception of the remake as overly preachy and disconnected from audience desires. Zegler herself became a recurring figure in these memes, often depicted as the villain of her own narrative, digitally superimposed onto images of the evil queen or other Disney antagonists. The internet, in its collective wisdom and often brutal humor, had rendered its verdict. Rachel Zegler, once poised to become a beloved Disney princess, had been transformed in the court of public opinion into a symbol of Hollywood arrogance, tone deafness, and a cautionary tale for stars and studios alike. And as the online world continued to churn out memes and commentary, the broader implications for Hollywood began to crystallize, raising fundamental questions about the future of remakes and the delicate balance between modernization and respecting beloved classics.
Right? She wants the privilege of insulting you, hating you, but then wants you to also show up to her Disney remake of the Snow White that she hates. She thinks we're predictably stupid on top of being racist and backwards and dumb.
The Snow White catastrophe reverberated through Hollywood, serving as a potential wake-up call for an industry increasingly navigating the treacherous waters of adapting beloved intellectual property in a rapidly evolving cultural landscape. The film's dismal performance forced studios to confront uncomfortable truths about audience expectations, the power of nostalgia, and the potential pitfalls of prioritizing messaging over genuine entertainment. Industry analysts and commentators began to speculate whether this box office bomb would trigger a fundamental shift in Hollywood's approach to remakes and adaptations. Would studios become more cautious, more attuned to the desires of their core audiences, and less inclined to inject overtly political or ideological themes into established narratives? Some suggested a potential recalibration, a move away from perceived woke messaging and a renewed focus on crafting stories that prioritize entertainment value and resonate with a broader audience. The Snow White debacle became a case study in the potential consequences of alienating core fan bases, highlighting the delicate balance between updating classic tales for contemporary sensibilities and preserving the essence that made them beloved in the first place. It raised crucial questions about whether studios had become too detached from the audiences they sought to serve and whether the pursuit of modernization had, in this instance, inadvertently undermined the very magic that defined the Snow White legacy. While the long-term impact remained to be seen, the Snow White saga undeniably served as a potent reminder that in the business of fairy tales, as in Hollywood itself, audience approval remains the ultimate magic wand. And as Hollywood grappled with these broader industry implications, the immediate future of Rachel Zegler's career hung precariously in the balance.
Every single one of these reviews is just absolutely brutal. And what you also need to know is that these are not politically driven reviews. I mean, most of them are from the camp that should be supporting Disney, that should be behind this new progressive take on Snow White, and yet they can't because the film is apparently just that bad.
Rachel Zegler is extraordinarily woke, but she's woke in a way that's quite deranged.
Great. Okay? It's great.
I'm honored. I don't know why I sound so angry right now. I'm honored. Am I a psychopath?
The fallout from the Snow White fiasco extended far beyond Rachel Zegler's immediate career prospects. Within the hallowed halls of Disney, boardrooms likely buzzed with urgent discussions and strategic reassessments. A financial loss of this magnitude couldn't be ignored, forcing the entertainment giant to scrutinize its approach to future projects, particularly within its lucrative live-action remake division. Industry insiders speculated about potential shifts in Disney's development strategy. Would there be a move towards safer, more nostalgia-driven adaptations, prioritizing faithful retellings over radical reinventions? Could we see a tempering of overtly progressive messaging in favor of broader, more universally appealing narratives? The Snow White experience might prompt a more cautious approach to casting, with studios potentially prioritizing actors with established public goodwill and a less controversial public persona. Marketing campaigns could also be recalibrated, focusing less on edgy, deconstructive angles and more on celebrating the timeless appeal of classic stories. Some analysts even suggested that this debacle could lead to internal restructuring within Disney's creative teams, a re-evaluation of decision-making processes, and a renewed emphasis on audience research and market testing. The kingdom of Disney, once seemingly invincible in its box office dominance, had been visibly shaken. Snow White became a costly lesson, a stark reminder that even the most powerful brands are not immune to public sentiment and that alienating core audiences can have significant financial repercussions. The studio's future moves in the wake of this cinematic winter would be closely watched, providing a real-time case study in how entertainment giants adapt and evolve in response to major missteps.
Her heroine cannot be in love or be saved by a man, the prince, that she's more focused on becoming the leader she was meant to be, as if women in modern-day America must make that choice.
Amidst the broader industry ramifications and Disney's strategic soul-searching, the question of Rachel Zegler's individual future remained a central point of speculation. Was this truly a career-ending event, or could she navigate the treacherous path to redemption in Hollywood's fickle landscape? The challenges were undeniable. Her public image had been significantly damaged, her reputation tarnished by controversy and perceived arrogance. Future casting directors might hesitate, concerned about the potential for further PR headaches and audience backlash. However, Hollywood is also known for its capacity for forgiveness and its embrace of comeback narratives. Zegler's talent, evident in her earlier work, hadn't vanished. A strategic apology, a demonstration of humility, and a willingness to learn from the Snow White experience could be crucial first steps. Choosing future projects wisely, perhaps focusing on roles that showcase her acting abilities without the weight of pre-existing expectations or controversial baggage, could be another avenue for rebuilding her career. Independent films, smaller-scale dramas, or even a foray into theater could offer opportunities to demonstrate her craft and gradually reshape public perception. Ultimately, Zegler's path forward would depend on a complex interplay of factors: her own choices, the willingness of the industry to offer second chances, and the evolving sentiments of the public. The Snow White storm had undeniably left its mark, but in the ever-shifting sands of Hollywood, even a blizzard can eventually give way to a new dawn. Whether Rachel Zegler could successfully navigate this changing climate and emerge stronger on the other side remained an open question, a compelling subplot in the ongoing drama of the Snow White saga.
So, I mean, look at this right here. Snow White crashes 70% in second weekend box office. I seriously didn't know that things got this bad for this Rachel Zegler Snow White movie, but I'm reading this right now, and I'm worried about Rachel Zegler's career. I don't see how she comes back from this.
The Snow White saga remains a complex and multifaceted narrative, a tangled web of miscalculated risks, mismanaged PR, and perhaps a degree of self-inflicted damage. The film's failure is undeniable, leaving behind a trail of financial losses, reputational damage, and lingering questions about the future direction of Disney and Hollywood as a whole. For Rachel Zegler, the immediate aftermath presents a critical juncture, a career crossroads fraught with uncertainty. Is this the cinematic equivalent of a death sentence, a career-ending stumble from which recovery is impossible, or is it a brutal, albeit necessary wake-up call, a harsh lesson learned in the unforgiving crucible of Hollywood fame? History suggests that Hollywood is no stranger to redemption stories, and comebacks, though challenging, are not unheard of. However, such narratives typically require a degree of humility, a public acknowledgement of missteps, and a demonstrable shift in approach. Whether Zegler is willing or able to embrace such a path remains to be seen. An apology tour, a strategic rebranding, or a transformative performance in a future project could potentially begin to repair her tarnished image, but the climb back to public favor will be arduous. The internet's memory is long, and the shadow of the Snow White controversy is likely to linger for some time. One thing remains unequivocally clear: the drama surrounding this saga is far from over. Whispers of unresolved backstage tensions, non-disclosure agreements silencing key players, and rumors of potential legal ramifications continue to circulate. The Snow White story, in its messy, unpredictable, and ultimately cautionary nature, has more chapters yet to be written, more twists and turns waiting to unfold. Is this the definitive end of Rachel Zegler's fairy tale aspirations, or merely a dramatic cliffhanger setting the stage for an unexpected sequel? Share your predictions and thoughts in the comments below. What do you foresee for Rachel Zegler's future in the wake of the Snow White storm?